Human beings are totally mythological creatures. Where language is our basis, story is our basis. A story for a kid or a fairy tale is like this essential vitamin or nourishment. And culturally, we have different stories that we depend upon. Patriotism is a story. Progress is a story. I think we've reached the end of a lot of governing myths around our society, and we need to evolve new myths, new beliefs. My name is Daniel Pinchbeck. I was born in New York City. I'm a writer and a thinker and sometimes an entrepreneur. How Soon Is Now looks at the ecological crisis as a kind of rite of passage or initiation for the human species to reach another level of consciousness and another level of society. One of the main things that's impelled me to write this book is a study of the evidence around the ecological crisis. We find ourselves in this very powerful country, if you live in the United States, that has just elected a president who denies that we are in a crisis of ecology and climate and so on. But the evidence from a vast preponderance of scientists is that we've passed a lot of critical thresholds and tipping points. We're also losing 10% of the Earth's remaining biodiversity every 10 to 15 years. We're losing 100 to 150 species a day out of a little more than 8 million total species. And we now know how tightly meshed together the web of life is on the planet. So as we pull it apart, eventually it's going to break down and we'll enter a different cycle where the Earth just won't be very hospitable and won't support large mammals such as ourselves. I definitely grew up with this idea of art as the most valuable human activity and the counterculture, bohemian idea of the pursuit of like personal liberation, creativity, spontaneity. I wanted to be a poet and a fiction writer. I was writing poetry. I was trying to write novels. But I began to more and more have a sense that something was deeply lacking, something was missing. If we look at every traditional and tribal society around the world, they invariably have some type of initiation or rite of passage, something that people have to go through. And then as I went through college and I became a young adult, nobody, approached me and said, hey, we're going to introduce you to this mystery. I think I began to get cynical and jaded. And I think that's something that actually happens to a lot of people culturally. It was only when I ended up writing Breaking Open the Head and I went to Africa and the Amazon and took substances like ayahuasca in Ecuador and iboga in West Africa that I actually maybe found what I'd always been looking for, which was a kind of a transcendent experience or a visionary experience that took me outside of my egoic state and seemed to reveal that there was a much more complex and beautiful cosmos, that there were these different levels of spiritual reality. In all these cultures, it seems like the idea is that you can't really become an adult until you've had some type of initiation, have passed through some type of threshold of visionary experience. It's been our modern idea that those are just cultural experiences. They're kind of interesting, they're cute, but actually some people think that they might almost have like a neurophysiological function. The part of our brain that makes us distinctly human is the prefrontal cortex or the neocortex, and that only developed in the last 100,000 years or so. That is the part of the brain that allows us to use language, to use abstract symbols, to plan long distance for the future, and so on. And it may be that that initiatory shock is actually required to allow the human being to reach their full flourishing, their full level of functioning, which is actually to be able to transcend that egoic limit and see yourself as part of a community or part of a tribe, or responsible for a larger collective. Because modern society doesn't have those types of rituals, as people began to realize in large quantities that they were missing this experience, they sought different ways to discover it for themselves. So it almost feels as if there's like a subconscious desire on the part of humanity to bring about a cathartic catastrophe, to go through some collective process together of suffering, potentially to initiate, to pass through it like a rite of passage. And on the other side of that might be maturity as a species, that actually do what we need to do to take care of everything responsibly. Collectively, subconsciously, we're pushing towards this crisis to force our own transcendence as a species. The danger is that we might not make it through. If we look at the statistics, we have a serious possibility that we're going to end up causing our own extinction. And that actually could happen within the next century or half century. I think one of the problems that we have as human beings is it's much harder for us to deal with long-term threats that are growing slowly over long periods, such as the threat of ecological collapse, or the threat of nuclear war based on a social disintegration. If we were to say, okay, this is an initiation, it's going to require radical system change. To deal with those threats, we actually have to use our intellect. We have to kind of connect our intellect with our heart and not see them as distinct. What I seek to offer in How Soon Is Now is a blueprint for how this transformation could happen. How social systems are constructed has a lot to do with what type of media is available. The internet is now a new type of media and a new phenomenon to reorganize our society. Democratic decision-making could be continuous. We could all be part of some social infrastructure where we make decisions together all the time. It's possible that capitalism is actually a transitional system. Capitalism has brought the world together into one global market. It's unified humanity in a certain sense. Everyone can communicate with each other instantaneously. But capitalism is inherently unstable and also unsustainable because it constantly forces more growth and more development. Now we've reached a limit on the finite resources of the planet. We can't develop like that anymore. So we need to think about a new model of what development is. And that form of development would not be more buildings, bigger skyscrapers, more mining. It would be creating a society that really worked for the individual, that provided them with a much deeper level of satisfaction, cultural pursuits, maybe explorations of eroticism even. And I think the things that truly make people happy are, love, community, and the ability to give their gifts and feel that they have purpose and meaning in their lives. There's nature, and then there's human constructs. And those human constructs, we actually have the ability to redesign, rewrite, revise. We just forget that we have that power. One of the most crucial things is going to be kind of reinventing community, creating local communities or joining community groups as a way of breaking through the separation and the alienation that our capitalist culture has created.